Trump allies who quite honestly seem pretty bitter about Ronna McDaniel's ousting from the RNC. She has in fact stepped down from her position as the head of the RNC, are now urging the former president to dump Turning Point USA's Charlie Kirk because they argue that his racism is allegedly hurting Trump with the black vote. Now, as we know, Trump has actually been increasing his support among black voters, particularly black men. And we also do know that Charlie Kirk has a history of saying some pretty awful racist things. But Trump allies never really spoke out against Charlie Kirk's racism in the past. Suddenly they are, and I have a theory as to why that is. Now, in recent weeks, at least 3 people, including Ronna McDaniel herself, have privately warned Donald Trump about Charlie Kirk's conduct, and that's according to 7 sources who are familiar with these discussions and who spoke to NBC News for this story. Now, it's important to point out that McDaniel absolutely loathes Charlie Kirk for personal reasons, not due to moral issues. For instance, Charlie Kirk was influential in boosting an unsuccessful challenge to McDaniel just last year for head of the RNC. He also floated the idea that Donald Trump should tap his daughter-in-law, Lara Trump, for a party leadership post days before he endorsed her to serve as co-chair alongside North Carolina GOP chairman Michael Whatley. Kirk also drew some attention for basically covering a story that was broken by Red State about the RNC wasting a ton of cash, a ton of donor money under Ronna McDaniel's leadership. Let's take a look at that.
The RNC, despite raising less money than the DNC, spent $1 million on management consulting. The DNC spent $114,000 on management consulting. What is management consulting?
Well, it's a category that really doesn't have a lot of deliverables. It has just coaching for executives. It could be almost anything that they decide they want it to be. It could also be not much of anything, something where they just want to toss some money to people. I'm not accusing them of that, of saying that's what they did, but it's pretty nebulous and there's not really anything to show for it.
Charlie Kirk also called out the fact that the RNC in 1 year had spent $70,000 on floral arrangements, whereas the Democratic Party, the DNC, had spent $795 in a full year on floral arrangements. And according to the chart, which you're seeing on the screen right now, the RNC weirdly spent nearly $298,000 on office supplies, while the DNC spent only $45,000. The DNC spent no money at all on media booking consultants, but that wasn't the case with the RNC, which spent $116,341 on media consultants. Republicans also spent a lot of money on limousines and fancy travel to the tune of $263,000. Democrats, on the other hand, spent $7,000. So that was pretty embarrassing reporting for the RNC, and Charlie Kirk drew a lot of attention to it. So I'm sure that plays a role in Ronna McDaniel trying to snipe him. And going back to Republicans going after Charlie Kirk, Kirk came up during Ronna McDaniel's conversation with Trump at his Mar-a-Lago resort this month, in which her future at the helm of the RNC was discussed. McDaniel blamed Kirk, Charlie Kirk that is, for some of the RNC's fundraising woes, saying, no, it's not my leadership that's a problem. It's Charlie Kirk's racism that's a problem. McDaniel asked Trump if he was aware of comments Kirk made on his popular podcast questioning Martin Luther King Jr. and whether he deserved a federal holiday, and also remarking that diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives in the airline industry made him skeptical that Black pilots were qualified. He was not, so she relayed them to him. So I'm giving you all that background because I think both things are true. I do not think that Ronna McDaniel is somehow suddenly motivated by her desire to increase support among Black voters toward Donald Trump. I think she's going after Charlie Kirk specifically because Charlie Kirk has been going after her. I could be wrong, but that is my interpretation of the story. What do you think, Cenk?
No, there's no chance you're wrong. So this story has a lot of Republicans being right and wrong about each other. So since Charlie Kirk went on the crusade against Ronna McDaniel is obviously taking shots at him on her way out, and she's not being subtle about it. I mean, she's giving her name, her allies are throwing Kirk under the bus. So is it real? Is there really dissatisfaction with Charlie Kirk from the Trump camp? My best guess based on this report is no, there's no dissatisfaction at all. It's just Ronna McDaniel, her allies, and a rando black Republican. So here's my proof of that. First of all, Don Trump Jr. gives glowing quotes about Charlie Kirk and how he's like family. I don't think he's going to do that without his dad's permission. They're saying that Trump is upset with Charlie Kirk because of his racist comments. Have they met Donald Trump? That is like the worst attack against Charlie Kirk you could possibly do among Republican circles. That's not going to work at all. Charlie Kirk is in fact racist. Those things are true, but no one inside of Trump's team or the Republican Party cares. But Charlie Kirk is correct about how much money the RNC is spending and how they're wasting it. Actually, when I see a segment in the right-wing world that is not unhinged from reality and that is pointing out corruption, it's amazing, and I'm like, okay, maybe they haven't lost their complete minds. Right, and I know that there's a reason why he's doing it. So we'll get to that too. They're trying to scam off of the Republican voter rolls. There's a thing where they got their own app, so they want to destroy the RNC for their own personal profit. It looks like, we'll give you the details, but the RNC is obviously wasting a lot of money. The most shocking part of this story is none of that. It's that the DNC's spending looks pretty reasonable. It looks like they're actually
trying to.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you, but that was amazing. I was like, oh my God, the Democrats are actually doing something right. This is incredible.
Yeah, I mean,
thank you, Red State. Thank you, Red State, for reporting on this.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that there's a lot of people in the country that have a bigger problem with the DNC than I do. Okay, but I was very pleasantly surprised to see those numbers where it looks like they're spending money to actually try to win elections and not wasting it on themselves. So fairest show in America. Great job, DNC. That's what we get out of this Charlie Kirk Trump story, but more.
So I wanted to mention the black pastor that you had referenced earlier, Cenk, who has been speaking out against Charlie Kirk. Aside from Ronna McDaniel, he's the only other individual who is a Trump ally and who was actually named in the NBC report. And so his name is Daryl Scott. He is a black pastor in Ohio. And he says, I've got to say, racism is like the word ugly. I can't always describe it, but I know it when I see it. That boy's a racist right there, referring to Charlie Kirk, of course. These kinds of inflammatory statements, some people will conclude that Trump shares those same sentiments.
I got bad news for you, Daryl. He does. You can go ahead and assume that as well, but apparently you missed that memo.
Okay, there's more. There are a number of others that are not in agreement with Charlie's bullcrap and that are saying we don't need this. Every single call I've got from some people high up in the Republican Party and people high up in the Trump orbit, they're all on my side. They're all saying, I'm glad you're telling him to shut up. So look, I do think that there are Trump supporters who aren't racist and who find the kind of rhetoric that you hear from Charlie Kirk, and yes, sometimes from Donald Trump himself, pretty unsavory, distasteful, disgusting. But in terms of the public-facing, prominent Trump allies, a lot of that rhetoric has gone completely unchecked. So that's really what's informing my analysis of this story and what the real intentions and motivations are for Ronna McDaniel and her allies. And to your point, Cenk, it doesn't really appear that Donald Trump is bothered by Charlie Kirk at all. In fact, Trump himself believes that Charlie Kirk is a juggernaut. And then you have another Trump ally saying that Trump is effing pissed that Charlie is out causing problems for him in the black community. But this is a Trump ally who didn't want to be named, and I don't know how much we should believe the statement made by him.
I don't
and Don Jr.'s, yeah, me either. Don Jr.'s statement is pretty clear. Donald Trump Jr., a close Kirk ally, said that the idea that Kirk is in anything less than great standing with both my father and the entire Trump campaign is nothing more than fiction coming from people jealous of the close relationship Charlie has built with our family. Frankly, it's sad that there are some people attempting to increase their own relevancy by manufacturing lies that Charlie is on the outs. Nothing could be further from the truth. And I do want to give you some information about that app that Turning Point USA has been promoting and wants to basically have the Republican Party use that app instead of what the RNC has been doing. So many of Kirk's critics have been saying that he's less passionate about getting Republicans elected and more passionate about the grift. So Tyler Boyer, I should say, is the chief operating officer of Turning Point USA, and he's been pitching local GOP chairs on transitioning their voter outreach and canvassing efforts to an app that was created by something known as Superfeed Technologies. Now, the company is led by him, so it is his app essentially. And so the new app, which helps organize things like text message campaigns, the creation of custom voter contact lists for phone banking and programs to help organize grassroots door knocking campaigns. That's like everything that it does. But the data would then be kept by Superfeed, not the RNC, state or local parties. And that could be packaged and resold for a significant sum of money. So that is what the Trump allies taking jabs at Charlie Kirk are pointing to as the reason why Charlie Kirk has been attacking Ronna McDaniel and the RNC. They say that it's all just a grift.
Okay, so we bury the lead on the most amazing fact in this story that's going to totally depress you, but I'm going to bury it just for one more minute to address the things that Anna said. Look, those apps on the canvassing, et cetera, if you don't know politics, you might think like, oh, a little app on canvassing. I don't know how lucrative that could be. No, that is a giant business, an enormous business. And if Turning Point USA can kill the Republicans doing that and they get a hold of it, one, they would make untold money, unbelievable money. And they would have the power of having the Republican voter list, which is massive power. So he's got an enormous financial incentive to throw Ronna McDaniel and the RNC under the bus. Charlie Kirk and his buddy, the chief operating officer, Tyler Boyer, do. Now you could draw any conclusions you like from that, but that's potentially a big motivating factor to try to destroy the RNC from within, okay? And then one thing that we didn't mention in the story is the RNC, there's been a lot of losses under Ronna McDaniel, and there was a debate, is that her fault? Is it people like Charlie Kirk? No, guys, neither. So you see, we're fair, we've been telling you about all sides here, who's right, who's wrong, even among Republicans, even when they're right? So yeah, there's one guy who's responsible for the Republican losses, that's Donald Trump. He keeps picking lunatic candidates who are like, I just came back from Mars and you can't see my other two heads, but they're telling me that Trump won the election and they can't figure out why they lost. Yeah, the calls coming from inside the house, it's all Trump's fault. Ronna McDaniel has 100 problems, including the ridiculous spending she did at the RNC, but the losses are not hers. And now finally, the crazy fact. Since 2016, Turning Point USA has gotten $250 million in funding. $250 million. And that is not an investment, that is here, take this money and do marketing and propaganda on behalf of Donald Trump and the right wing. So if we had 1% of that money here from you guys, our grassroots fundraising effort at TYT would be successful, extremely successful, and we'd be good to go. Just 1%, okay? They have endless money in the right wing, and they use it for propaganda to try to brainwash people into believing they're crap. Remember that, understand that, and that also shows you Charlie Kirk is perfectly safe. The giant funders of the Republican Party didn't put $250 million in there because they don't like him. They love what he's doing, including all the comments about how terrible Martin Luther King Jr. is and how you can't trust black professionals, etc. Republican donors love that, finance that, and are very happy with that marketing. If you enjoyed this video, that's because of our members. They make us independent, they make us strong, and they make us honest. Become a member today by hitting the join button below.